you wanted the best, you've got the best podcast. The hottest podcast in the world. The Chris Voss Show, the preeminent podcast with guests so smart you may experience serious brain bleed. The CEOs, authors, thought leaders, visionaries, and motivators. Get ready. Strap yourself in. Keep your hands, arms, and legs inside the vehicle at all times, because you're about to go on a monster education roller coaster with your brain. Now, here's your host, Chris Voss.
Hello, this is Voss here from thechrisvossshow.com. There you go, ladies and gentlemen. This is the official. Welcome to 16 years, 2,800 episodes of the Chris Voss, and we're starting to get ready to click over to 2,900 episodes. So we're just having fun with all that and doing all the things. Opinions expressed by guests on the podcast are solely their own and do not necessarily reflect the opinions of the host or the Chris Voss Show. Some guests of the show may be advertising on the podcast, but it is not an endorsement or review of any kind. Today, we have an amazing young man on the show. We're going to be talking to him about his books. We had him on yesterday to talk about one of his other books, and the book we'll be talking today is an amazing story that we touched on last time. It is entitled 1,000 Kisses, A Family's Escape from the Nazis to a New Life, out September 7th, 2017. Welcome to the show. How are you, John?
Fine, thank you. Very good.
Thank you. And give us any .coms, websites, emails. Where do you want people to get to know you better on the interwebs?
There is a website, www.johnwweiser.com. I'm trying to get something plugged in here.
Okay. Give us a 30,000 overview of what this book is about.
This book is about the situation of a family happily living in Vienna, Austria, and all believing they're Catholic. And then Hitler came and they annexed Austria to be part of Germany. Very soon thereafter, they began to apply the anti-Jewish laws that they had in Germany. And then to our surprise, my father got a letter from the authorities saying they believed that he was a Jew. So there you had the government stamping him as a Jew.
Even though he's Catholic. Wow.
And they were closing the noose on Jews. So he eventually escaped to Hungary, where his mother lived, where he had been born. And then my mother in Vienna and my father in Hungary were busy trying to get a visa to go to some country so we could enter and live there. And everybody that we wrote to turned us down. Finally, out of the blue, we got a tourist visa to go to Brazil. So we went to Brazil and lived there for a couple of years. And then finally, the war in Europe made it impossible for Europeans to leave.
Yeah.
And so the quota in the United States opened up because there was nobody able to take advantage of the quota. Our family was able to take advantage of the quota and come to the United States in 1941.
1941. That was the early days of the war. And yeah, I mean, what a harrowing escape, just in the title of the thing. So were these the folks, The Hills Are Alive with Music, a Sound of Music movie? I'm just teasing.
It was about the same time, yes.
About the same time.
Yes,
yeah. It's really interesting. Your family was Catholic and they just decided to call them Jewish. Did they maybe just mark everyone of religious faith maybe Jewish, or was that the thing? Or
no, in fact, years later, I discovered some documents that confirmed that my father's family was, in fact, Jewish.
Oh, really?
Yes.
So that would make you Jewish.
They had been baptized. When he came to Austria, married my mother, all our lives were Catholic lives. But that was still in the background, that Jewish birth.
Where does the story start out at? Give us lay a foundation for us on where it begins.
Well, the story starts for me when I'm playing in the park. I look up and I see Hitler up in the city hall of Vienna. And they have just marched into Austria, and he's there talking to the Austrian citizens, telling them how glad he is that they're now German. And most of them were very happy. They were delighted.
Really? They were, huh?
They were, because it was a situation of make Austria great again.
Oh, God.
It's a variation on MAGA.
Yeah, really?
Austria had been a large kingdom before the First World War, but it was on the side of the Germans in the First World War. And when they lost the war, in the settlement after the war, Austria was broken up into a bunch of pieces. Part went to Czechoslovakia, part went to Romania, part went to Yugoslavia, and what was left was a small appendix of a country. But that was Austria. That's where we lived.
That was Austria for you. No, that was you as a young child in Austria then, right? You were.
Yes.
Wow. And you were how old at that time?
We left when I was 6.
Wow. So you're just a kid. You don't understand what's going on. You're just like mom and dad are worried and stressed. And this seems, what a time to live through. Wow. You actually saw Hitler.
It was a wonderful life in Vienna for us. My grandparents owned a very popular restaurant in Vienna. My father was a successful doctor. We lived in a lovely apartment, and we were about a 3-block walk from what's called the Volksgarten, the People's Garden, which was appended to the Habsburg Palace. So I was walking every morning with my mother and sister down to this beautiful garden, all part of the old royal gardens. It's beautifully maintained, flowers, trees, lawns. It was a lovely place.
Yeah. And then the Nazis showed up and did the Nazi thing. When do you kind of start noticing as a child that things are off, that things are disturbed, and maybe your parents are concerned about things?
The first thing we realized, of course, is that my father had left. He had escaped to Hungary, and after a couple of weeks, my sister and I were sent to Hungary to stay with him and my Hungarian grandmother, because my mother was very busy trying to get all the necessary papers. First, the papers to leave Austria, and secondly, papers to try to get to some other country.
Yeah.
And the Germans had a rule. All the Jews had to leave, but the rule was they had to leave their money behind.
Oh, wow.
So you had to give a long assessment of everything you owned so they could be sure it was all still left when you went.
Wow. And it's a little hard to travel if you don't have money.
That's right.
Yeah.
I've often wondered how my parents did that.
Did you, I guess you never asked them or found,
No.
Did you interview them for your book, or was it too late by the time you got around to writing the book?
No, by the time I came around to writing the book, they were both gone.
Yeah.
But it was funny. We never talked about Austria. We never talked about our life there or leaving. We did talk about the relatives who were still there, because when the war broke out and the United States joined in the war, my parents would send care packages to their relatives in Europe. So I knew there were people back there, and I knew that we were trying to help them. But we never talked about the fact that my father was considered Jewish by the Nazis.
Wow.
We never talked about any of that.
You know, we've had people on the show, and I think we did have one historian that talked about this aspect of Jews who were caught up in the World War II, and they eventually moved to Israel and set up their new lives there after the war. And one of the things that she studied and talked about in her research was how so many people from that era that lived through that experience of World War II and the horrors of even the camps and stuff, and they survived the camps. They didn't want to talk about it when it was over. It was like they just wanted to put it behind them, the horror, and they just wanted to get back to a normal life. And so a lot of Jewish people were like that. They just didn't talk about it. In fact, a lot of soldiers didn't talk about it either. You know, everybody just wanted to get back to normal and, raise your family, love your kids, and work a job, and, they try and probably forget the horrors that they saw in the camps. And it's quite interesting because, nowadays everybody talks about everything. I mean, I have a podcast I can blather about just about anything and do. But
it was interesting. One of my children made a comment to me that told me he had no idea what was back in Europe and what our family's history had been. So I decided I would write something for my children so that they'd know what their grandparents had done and what had happened to the family.
Yeah.
And we stay in close contact with my cousins in Europe. They come to visit us in the United States, and we host them. And I've sometimes gone back to Vienna to visit.
Yeah. Yeah. And so you have gone back there. Have you met relatives or seen your original house that you grew up in, maybe?
Oh, yes. All of
What was that like? Tell me about it.
It was wonderful. It was great to look up at the apartment. We had this lovely sunny apartment on the second floor. It was a large apartment because part of it was my father's medical office. And it was this very nice location where we were only a few blocks from this beautiful park. Unfortunately, my grandparents' restaurant was sold after the war
Oh,
to an
really?
insurance company, which tore it down and put up what I consider a really ugly building. But there you are. That's progress.
Now, I'm getting a little bit of either growling or maybe a dog napping or something in the background, some snoring. I'm getting some sound that's coming in.
Okay,
In the
I think
background.
that was my foot rubbing against something.
Oh, okay.
I'll stop that.
It sounded like a little puppy snoring or something. What a thing to be able to go back and see. It is interesting. There's social media accounts that what they do is they take pictures of what the houses look like that were bombed out or, semi-destroyed or,
Right.
they clearly were part of the war, and sometimes the Nazis are there and the tanks or sometimes the Americans. But, they'll show a house that's kind of maybe 10% of it got blown up or roof got blown in, and they show what it looks like today. And they do this side-by-side comparison, and it's really fun to look at because you're like,
Yes.
wow, that's still pretty much the same house. They rebuilt it almost. And that house is still standing now. I mean, World War II ended in 1945, so we're in 2025, we'll call it. So we'll say
Long time.
long. There's easy math right there.
80 years.
80 years. Wow.
Long
Going on
time.
81. And to see those, homes still standing and it's kind of I think it's kind of a monument to the endurance and hope of the human spirit. That
Absolutely.
people rebuild and try and build a better world and stuff. Do you see a lot of parallels in the MAGA movement and what's going on with, make America great? I mean, all these slogans are stolen from Hitler and Goebbels and stuff like that.
It was interesting. I had a number of people review the book, and one of them was the president of a university here. He noted that the way I started the book with Hitler, he's the one who pointed out the parallel to the MAGA movement, that is, make Austria great, make America great again.
Yeah.
People do want to live in a country they can be proud of.
Yeah. And that represents good morals and ethics and good, what's that the golden rule?
Right.
Be good to others so you can, it's pretty simple in life, I mean, unless you want roving bands of marauders and people killing and pillaging and all that crazy stuff they did in the Dark Ages, if you want a good society, you gotta be nice to each other.
That's right. Yeah.
So
love is the solution.
love is always the solution, I think, sometimes. Although sometimes choking someone out that I hate might feel better. The judge says I can't do that anymore. So so you take this journey. Did you come over by boat?
Yes, we went by boat from Yugoslavia, from Trieste.
Really?
To Brazil. We lived in Brazil for a couple of years, and then we took a boat from Brazil up to the United States. It was a cargo ship that made stops at various ports along the way. One of the interesting things is we got to Venezuela, and they wouldn't let us off the ship because they were afraid we were German spies.
Oh, holy crap! You're running for your lives,
right?
And hear this. I mean, that's just extraordinary. I remember, sadly, this is a famous story. There was a ship of Jews that came in to New York, and they wouldn't let them offload, and they sent them back to their death in Europe. Many of them died.
Yes.
And just really sad times in there. And the nationalism, and we see that today, the nationalism, where it's, we don't want other people here. And, it really irritates me that for eons of time, politicians have always pointed the finger at the other will they steal from their constituents.
Right.
You know, person stealing from you, look over there as they pick your pocket. Right. And it's always the immigrant stranger, that one you should be afraid of, when really they should be afraid of the politician who's pitching that crap. And
we had a lot of letters from people. I remember the Canadian fellow writing my father saying, we can't let you in because then we'd have to let a lot of other people in, and it would destroy the balance of our population.
Wow. You come here and your parents never told you the story. So did you have to put this together on yourself, maybe with relatives and piecing it together, and maybe some, I don't know, data they left behind, newspapers or anything like that?
It was very interesting. My mother had lived in the same apartment in Manhattan where my father had his practice and where I grew up. And she died when she was 92. And we went back to the apartment to clean it up so we could give it back to the landlord. And as I was going through the closets, I found this sack, a cloth sack. And I took it home, opened it up, and it was full of letters that they had been carrying around since 1938. This was now 1990 something. But they kept these letters. I keep thinking she kept it, hoping that somebody would find them and do something with them. So I took the letters and I tried to translate them myself. That took too long. So I hired some translators to translate the letters. And what you find is there are a lot of translators out there, and some are only about a day ahead of you. They're using dictionaries as they translate. But then there were some other very good guys who did a very good job for me. And I put those letters together, and they told this beautiful story of really a love story between my parents as they supported each other, one in Austria and one in Hungary, trying to keep each other's spirits up as they were struggling, trying to get a way out. So it was a beautiful exercise. I was very glad to do that for my kids.
And, you know, telling the story, I mean, the important things about these stories is changing how things, hopefully affecting the future, to make sure people are aware of it and they don't do things again. But as Chris Voss quotes on the Chris Voss Show, the one thing man can learn from his history is that man never learns from his history. And thereby we go round and round, and we seem like we're in an 80-year cycle right now.
Yes.
And I mean, we have people literally quoting Hitler and Goebbels' speeches in our White House. And white nationalism is rebranded KKK. If you're very familiar with it, that's all it is. It's and KKKism is basically Nazism.
Scary.
Yeah. So are you concerned? Do you feel fear, or have you lived your life and you're like, whatever, you know, it's not like we're going to send you into war at your age.
No. I'm in my 90s. I'm okay.
We'll give you a big bazooka.
A lot of kids and a lot of grandkids, and I certainly would like them to lead a happy life, undisturbed by violence or by war. And I'm really scared what's happening today, that we start wars without thinking very much about how we're going to stop them. It's not a good idea.
Let's see here. What else do you hope people come away with when they read the book? Do you hope that they? I'll you say it.
I think what I hope is that they understand how difficult and how short-sighted governments can be, that they would keep people out who really need help, who are here to help, who are here to work and earn their living. They're not coming here to live off the state, but they really do need support, because back home somebody's trying to kill them. And in the end, he killed a lot of them. Really sad, the story you told of the ship that came full of Jews to the United States, hoping to be rescued, and was sent back to their death because somehow we couldn't accept a couple of hundred Jews.
Yeah. It's crazy. So when you guys get offboarded, you guys eventually offboarded in Venezuela? Oh, yeah, in New York. So they wouldn't let you off in Venezuela, so the ship went to New York?
The ship was ultimately going to New York, and our destination was New York.
Okay.
There was just a stop in Venezuela to unload some cargo, take on new cargo. And the passengers, there were only a few passengers on the ship. It was primarily a freight carrier, but the passengers were allowed to visit locally, except we were not allowed off the ship because they feared we might spy on them.
Wow. That is crazy, man. That is some crazy, wacky stuff.
Yes.
That it really is. So let's see. Do you see writing any further books about this, or maybe about the other parts of your family and relatives you stayed in touch with?
I don't think so. I've started to write a book on civics because I think that's an important subject.
Oh, yeah.
And my kids persuaded me to stop that and write a book about what I believe. So I'm doing that now. But that gets into religion. And that's probably going to be a more personal book, but we'll see.
Mm-hmm. Now, we talked about your other two books. Some people catch one show, but they don't catch the others. We have you on 3 times again next week for your third book. Tell me the other 2 books that you have.
The first of the other 2 books we'll talk about next week. Mm-hmm. It's an overview of the life of a remarkable man, Bishop William Swing, who was for 26 years the Episcopal Bishop of California. And he was a very brave guy, did a lot of things that other people wouldn't touch. For example, when San Francisco was going through the AIDS crisis, everybody stayed away from it. It was like the plague. You didn't want to go there for fear you might catch it.
Yeah.
But he went there, and he went right into the middle of the area where the homosexual group lived, and he talked to them and tried to understand them, and then began to do things to help them and bring what, as he considered, bring Christianity to them, since they were in many cases shunned by their churches.
Oh, wow.
So he did that. Then later, he was asked as Bishop of San Francisco whether he would host religious leaders in connection with the 50th anniversary of the United Nations. The United Nations Charter had been signed in San Francisco in 1945. In 1995, they wanted to have a 50th celebration. So they did, and they asked him if he would host religious leaders. So he said he would. I'm thinking, he said, if the nations of the world have a United Nations where they can talk to each other, shouldn't there be a United Religions where the religions of the world can talk to each other?
That seems like that would be a good idea.
Yeah, so he tried. He went around and took a sabbatical, went around the world meeting religious leaders everywhere. Mm-hmm. And the unfortunate answer from most of them was not interested.
Really?
But as he was going around, he was doing a lot of lecturing and talking. And what he found was that ordinary people, the people in the street, were very excited about the idea of religions working together.
Yeah.
So ultimately, what came out of it was something called the United Religions Initiative, which is today the largest interfaith organization in the world. So he's done a wonderful job.
Oh, wow.
It consists of small groups called cooperation circles, a minimum of 7 people. Each circle has to have representatives of 3 different religions, and they pick what they want to do in their locality, some tasks they think needs to be done, and they have to raise their own money and they have to run themselves, but they belong to this larger organization where they can get help from other people who are doing the same thing. They get moral support. Once in a while, somebody comes and gives them some training, but it has the potential to really change the way people look at each other and avoid religious violence and some of the other horrors we still have. Yeah. Anyway, that was one of the other things. Then he did a bunch of other stuff when I forget what happened, something was happening with housing. And so he got Black members of his community together. They eventually founded a development bank that provided money to Black businesses so they could get on with their lives and prosper.
That's wonderful. And so we'll get into that book next week, I believe.
Yes.
And then the book we talked about yesterday was,
Growing Your Nest Egg.
Growing Your Nest Egg.
The primer on investments for my children, grandchildren, and other young adults. And the idea is that all of our children, most of our children, are going to be working for companies that do not have retirement plans or pension plans. So they have to save for their own retirement. And the government helps them by allowing IRAs and 401k plans so you can compound tax-free.
Mm-hmm.
You finally get tax-free, you take the money out, but in the meantime, you've had a benefit. Well, the kids need to do that because they're going to be living for 20, 25 years after they retire, and nobody's going to support them except themselves. So I got into this. I started thinking, I'll teach them what I do. Then I realized as I looked at what Warren Buffett did, Peter Lynch, and some other very good investors, it's a lot of work. Most of us take the shortcut. We hire advisors who tell us you should buy A or buy B. And half the time they're right and half the time they're wrong. So you think about it, eventually I was persuaded that the safest thing to do is to invest in the market at large through an index fund, which tracks the way the market is moving. And my experience has been that I've now been investing for 50 years, and the amount of money I put in is the same amount of money I still have, but in the meantime, I've been living off the earnings for 50 years.
Wow.
So it's not a bad situation.
Yeah, that's a good.
But I hope to get my grandkids into.
Yeah. And so people can watch that episode. We put it out. It's not quite public yet, but we recorded it yesterday. Should be out in about 3 to 5 days from this one. Great. And they can check that out or order that book. So as we go out, give people the final pitch out to order this book that you wrote about your family, et cetera, et cetera.
I think I would like people to read the book just to see an example of what family went through because of the horror of what the Nazis were doing, where they sort of blacklisted a whole crowd of people and said, these are not acceptable people, get rid of them or eventually kill them. And so people fleeing for their lives and finding it very difficult to get accepted anywhere. We were sort of fortunate to fall into two things, a tourist visa in Brazil and later a war that allowed us to use an unused quota in the United States.
Wow.
But it's a lesson for everybody. There's also another underlying lesson, which is the power of love. That my parents, to support each other through some very difficult times. And because they loved each other and supported each other, they managed, with very limited resources and 2 children to feed, to come out, land on their feet, and have a happy life at the end.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, well, that's wonderful. What a great, beautiful story, the ending of trials and tribulations and things that people go through. Yes. So with all of these things, it's quite a journey and things that we go through life. And hopefully some people will learn from the parallels of what's going on now to what's going on then and the horrors that took place and the horrors that may be pending coming up. So thank you, John, for coming on the show. We really appreciate it.
Chris, it's always a pleasure to talk to you. Thank you very much.
You too as well. Folks, order up his book wherever fine books are sold, 1,000 Kisses, A Family's Escape from the Nazis to a New Life. Thanks so much for tuning in. Go to goodreads.com/Chris Voss, linkedin.com/Chris Voss, Chris Voss 1 on the TikTokity and all those crazy places on the internet. Thanks for tuning in. Be good to each other. Stay safe. We'll see you next.
You've been listening to the most amazing, intelligent podcast ever made to improve your brain and your life. Warning, consuming too much of the Chris Voss Show podcast can lead to people thinking you're smarter, younger, and irresistible sexy. Consume in regularly moderated amounts. Consult a doctor for any resulting brain bleed.
All right, John, that has us out. Great.